And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. The NBA trade deadline is only a couple of weeks away. February 9th. We will be live for you guys all day long. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep you guys updated on all the latest as we approach the NBA trade deadline. Now, of course, we cover the MLB, the NFL, and the NHL. The NFL playoffs are underway right now. We're down to the conference championship games. Chiefs versus Bengals, Eagles versus 49ers. We'll see who comes out on top and advances to the Super Bowl. Major League Baseball, of course, you just had Scott Rowland elected into the Hall of Fame. Todd Helton, very close to getting in, missed by 11 votes. We'll go over that during our baseball live that we have for you guys tomorrow evening. Make sure you join us for our weekly live about all things around the hot stove. And of course, the NHL season is underway. We're well into the season right now. All-Star Game is coming up. And then, of course, the trade deadline. Just as we're going to cover a lot of basketball for you guys leading up to the deadline, we'll do the same for the NHL. Now, first thing we mentioned last night anyway is that the Rui Hachimura deal for the Lakers was a big boon for them. They needed help at the wing. They got help at the wing. We got a little bit more details from Jake Fisher about how that was going to happen, or about how that happened on Friday, it seemed, or a couple days ago. Before they initially got this trade getting underway anyway, they had offered 2 second-round picks before. It seemed like they were holding out. The Wizards were supposedly holding out for multiple second-round picks, maybe even a first-round pick. Hachimura, after all, was a former top 10 pick in the NBA draft, and I don't think they were ever going to get that price. However, the Lakers, realizing they needed help at the wing more than anything else, realized this was their most gettable piece out there on the market, especially when they consider that they're going to need some help after the season is over as well. Because he's on an RFA deal right now, they will retain his rights going into free agency, and that allows them to go out there and add to that team in free agency, make a big signing out there, whoever they want to go after, kind of the top of the market type guy to fill in that roster, and then still be able to add over the cap anyway, if you will, to bring in Rui Hachimura once again. But he's a good two-way player anyway, good three-point shooter. He's also a little bit of a slasher to the bucket as well. He's not afraid to just drive it himself. He's not just going to stand in the corner and wait for you to create a shot, so LeBron doesn't have to do everything on that team anymore. You also have the fact of his defense anyway. He can guard 3 different positions effectively. He can guard the 2, the 3, and the 4. And we'll see how effective it is for the Lakers in the long run. But today we got some more news, more rumors out there. Welcome in, Ryan. LeBron getting traded. Unfortunately, not this season. He is not eligible to be traded, and I think that's part of the reason why the Lakers went out and made the move for Rui Hachimura. I don't really like the move from the standpoint of the Wizards because they could have still made this type of move after the season. I would rather have had insurance in case Kyle Kuzma does leave. He had a nice game today. That's kind of why we were late tonight, is that we were watching the Wizards game versus the Mavericks. Mavericks absolutely need some help for Luka Doncic. He's literally doing everything on the floor for them. They don't really have any defense to speak of right now, even though they're playing a couple of key defensive players in big-time situations. They don't really have a shot blocker in there right now, and that's because Maxi Kleber's hurt. But it was evident all over the floor that the Mavericks just don't have another player to hand the ball to be able to take some pressure off the Luka. If Luka's not creating the offense, that team does struggle. Spencer Dinwiddie's performed very well, but he's more of a third option, a secondary ball handler whenever one of those guys is off of the floor. I wouldn't want him as my primary shot creator at any point in the time, but I would love him as kind of an off-the-ball type of a guy. He's had good shooting numbers this year, and if I'm the Mavericks, I don't move him at the deadline. I would hold on to him, but I would try to move other pieces. Most notably, we've heard Tim Hardaway Jr.'s name out there, but as far as it relates to the Wizards and the Mavericks game in particular, Kyle Kuzma didn't exactly have, the triple-double type performance, but he did score 30 points. He was very effective. Both teams shot well from the floor for the most part during that game, and it was just evident the Mavericks just didn't have that one thing to really put them away. If Luka wasn't doing it, they weren't getting anything done down the stretch, and it's time for things to change in Dallas. I'm tired of hearing other media people in Dallas for the last 3-4 years say, we've got Luka, we've got cap space. Luka's on a cheap deal. Well, they don't have cap space. Luka's not on a cheap deal anymore. You can't pick and choose and wait for somebody who fits perfectly into this team. You have to go out there and force the issue. That's what I loved about the old Dallas Mavericks. Think back before they won the title, back to like the 2000 to 2005, 2006 Dallas Mavericks, even a little bit after that. Every single year, they were churning that roster over. They were trying to cultivate talent. This team, while it does have some talent, is not near the level of the talent of the other teams that they're going to be competing against in the NBA playoffs. And that's where the rub is for me. Sure, you want to build chemistry, but you need to have the talent first and then build that chemistry up. And right now, without Jalen Brunson on this roster, who's exactly going to take the pressure off of Luka Doncic right now? And I just don't see where it's going to come from internally. They have to make some type of a move. Do I think they need to make a desperation move and sell the farm? No. But I do think they need to make shrewd moves here at the deadline. Just standing pat or even adding just lightly around the periphery of this team, say like a Cam Reddish, is not going to improve this team in any way, shape, or form as it relates to the NBA playoffs for this season or for Luka's future going forward. Now, could they, get a Cam Reddish and eventually becomes, the star player we all thought he could be in the NBA draft? Sure. But if you're hoping for that and making this type of a trade to help you this season, you're shooting for the wrong goals, my friend. You need to add some big-time pieces around Luka Doncic. Now, as far as the Wizards go, Kuzma did play great. I'm really curious to see if he ultimately stays in Washington. We saw some rumblings a couple of weeks ago that Kuzma was looking for a big-time deal, that he was actually looking at greener pastures out there. We saw that the Wizards were wanting to keep a core four intact with Porzingis, Beal, Kuzma, and then whoever they add in free agency or via trade, whether that be a center or a guard, that doesn't really matter to them. They just wanted to add one more core player to that group, and it seems like they still value Kyle Kuzma at that level, but rumors at that time suggested that Kuzma was willing to move elsewhere in free agency. Now, considering that the Wizards don't exactly have the option to retain him as an RFA like they did with Hachimura, that's where I thought their mistake was in making the trade for Hachimura now, whereas they could have done the exact same trade in the offseason. Mavericks need to make a move big time. Do you think Luka will leave when contract up? I do not think he will leave. He's under contract for 5 more years, I believe. I don't think he's going to ask for a trade either. And it's not because he's too proud or, he loves Dallas or whatever the case may be. I just think he's not the type to really move around to other teams. Remember his connection with his national team, just the way he wants to force the issue and win. He wants to be the lead dog on a team. If he gets traded, he's not going to be the lead dog. And right now, he absolutely deserves to be that for whoever comes in as the co-star for Luka Doncic. It's not going to be the other way around. I mean, who are you going to trade him to that would give you equitable value back anyway? But I don't really like the conversation around that either as far as Luka Doncic wanting out. I think that conversation is at least 3 years too premature to even be premature. Luka's being burned by the playoffs. Or he is going to be burned by the playoffs. At this rate, even though he's in the best basketball shape of his life, he stayed in the gym during the offseason. And has really improved his game. I think he's averaging, 6 points higher than what he did last year. And he's been fantastic this year. But I do agree that we need to get some help for Luka. I don't think he's going to be burned out by the playoffs. I think he's literally just being asked to do too much. And I think that there are better ways to improve your ball club than having it all run through one guy. Make more versatile shot creators, having more shot makers on the outside as well. Having Spencer Dinwiddie, instead of having him play on the ball when Luka's off the floor, you can put him off the ball, and now he's making those 40% 3-point shots because of somebody else's dribble drive and kicking it out to him. That's how you improve the team when Luka goes off the floor, when Luka's having to take a breath to, after he's driven the offense 3 straight times down the floor, played nice defense. We saw a couple of blocked shots in the game tonight. But Luka's literally doing it all for Dallas, and he just needs some help, my friend. And we'll see where it gets it. We put a video out, a couple months ago, back in November, about SGA possibly being traded this season. I don't think that's going to happen. The biggest names we're hearing around the NBA trade deadline right now are going to be guys like Zach LaVine, OG Anunoby, players like that, Fred VanVleet. And for me, OG Anunoby is probably the best player of that group to kind of come into Dallas. They need some wing offense and defense, in my opinion, which is why I thought Hachimura would have been a nice buy low candidate for 3 second-round picks. Nice job by the Lakers getting him before anybody else realized that he was really out there on the market, going ahead and jumping at the price a couple weeks before the deadline and not waiting to the last minute and letting some other team to get in there and outbid them. But nice work for the Lakers. At this point in LeBron's career, he's just a stat patter. I I don't know about that. I mean, LeBron is still all about winning, in my opinion. It's just very difficult with the situation he's in. I think they will make the play-in after the move they made for Hachimura. Curious to see what else they do with that Russell Westbrook contract if they move those 2 first-round picks. But I think they will make the play-in. I think there's an outside chance they make the postseason and win in that play-in tournament. But a lot's gonna rely on Anthony Davis's health. If he's not healthy and they lose in the play-in or don't make the play-in at all, after this season, we could see the Lakers try to move on and move Hachimura into that starting spot and LeBron's spot in that lineup and try to move forward, get a couple of first-round picks for LeBron, that kind of a thing. But as of right now, the Lakers are all about trying to win this season, next season, and the season after that. After that point, LeBron's career is likely over. That's when the Lakers are going to begin their rebuild. Does that mean Anthony Davis is part of that? Does that mean Anthony Davis has improved enough to keep the team near the play-in every single year? That remains to be seen. One good feel-good story around the NBA right now has got to be the Sacramento Kings, though. The job they've done, the work they've done over the past year and a half or so to really improve that roster. Everybody questioned at the time the move of Halliburton for Sabonis. It seems like it's working out right now. I'm sure they'd love to have Tyrese Halliburton on that rookie deal, and what a talent he is. But they still have their future intact because they didn't trade away their first-round picks, so they can go out there and add to this team as well. But the rookie has certainly had a nice effect on this team as well. They have the big contract of Barnes that's going to be coming off the books, I believe, after the season, I want to say. So they got some good veteran leadership there. Sabonis has been exactly what this team needed up front, and they just keep finding ways to win. Now, do I believe them to be a postseason contender? No. This is the Sacramento Kings we're talking about. This is a team that's very young, needs to grow some experience, and it's going to take some time, probably a year or two, if this trend continues for the Sacramento Kings. But I like what they've built, but everybody deserves to take their hat off and give them a nice round of applause for what they've managed to do so far this year. But the best team in all of basketball so far this year has been the Boston Celtics. They've had a nice job of this offseason of bringing in a point guard, which is exactly what they needed. Somebody who could distribute the ball a little bit better. Brogdon at the time was thought of as more of a sixth man. We'll see if he's ultimately going to be, a sixth man as the season winds down. But in the closing lineups, he's still out there. His defense is invaluable. He's a 90-50-40 guy. He shoots 90% from the free throw line, 50% from the field, and 40% from the three-point arc. So those type of guys are very rare, especially in today's NBA. And Boston did a good thing by bringing him in. Cost them a bunch of smaller assets, but it was exactly the move to get them to be that to get that next level. Now they're still looking to add more pieces to this team. They're still looking for a big man, kind of an enforcer in the middle. There's rumors out there about Jakob Poeltl anyway from the San Antonio Spurs being available for 2 first-round picks, and that seems like a trade that might interest the Boston Celtics as well as the Toronto Raptors, who have been looking for a center for what seems like the last 5 years. But we'll see who ultimately ends up getting him. I do believe the Spurs are in asset acquisition mode, so they will move Poeltl this trade deadline because they do not want to sign him to a $20 million deal this offseason per season. Now, I do not believe he's worth that kind of money, but we've seen this type of player before on the free agent market. Think back a few years ago to Davis Bertans' contract. 2 very different styles of play. Bertans more of a athletic, rangy shooter, three-point shooter, whereas Poeltl's more of a down-low defensive presence. But maybe Poeltl's type of play is more consistent, whereas we saw Bertans really struggled with the shot and then really fell out of the rotation with the Wizards, injury issues, and then of course the trade to Dallas, where he's still on one of the worst contracts in all of basketball. Buyer beware of him in free agency. Kawhi Leonard coming out of nowhere and finally getting minutes. Well, he's on a minutes restriction of sorts anyway with the Clippers. They've had a very interesting rotation all year. John Wall, they're asking to play a lot differently than he's ever played in his career before. And it's really been, 5 years since John Wall played, 82-game schedule, etc. So it's going to take time for John Wall to really work out there. But as far as Kawhi getting minutes, it's purely about keeping him healthy for the postseason. We've seen Kawhi Leonard have his minutes restricted in other spots, being rested games, etc. That's nothing new, even from his times with the San Antonio Spurs to the Toronto Toronto Raptors and now with the Clippers. None of this is really new for Kawhi Leonard. He will be healthy come playoff time as long as they keep monitoring his health and taking care of him. That knee is what's always been an issue for Kawhi Leonard, and they just need to keep him healthy. As long as he's healthy, that team has a chance to win it all. But the key thing for the Clippers, they have to win it at least get to the conference finals, in my opinion, this year, if not to the NBA finals. Otherwise, the whole experiment would be deemed a failure in my eyes. Just yet another failed attempt at glory for the Clippers. We saw all those teams try to get so close to the Blake Griffins, the Chris Pauls of the world. They've tried that iteration of team years ago with the Corey Maggette, Elton Brand Clippers. They've tried different versions of this in the past, and each time you think they're really going to keep it going and build on that momentum, and then they fall on their face. They have to get somewhere. Kawhi Leonard is by far the best player that they've ever had on their roster before, and they just need to get it done. Paul George is no slouch either there for them. I really like their bench. They're versatile. They're long, rangy defenders as well, but they need a point guard and they need a center. Don't trust Zubac to be able to stay on the floor against really athletic clubs, even like Dallas. Doncic could pick out the double or pick him out of the lineup, go one-on-one with him, and immediately he's off the floor because you can't switch onto him with Zubac, and so he plays himself off the floor. They've also been rumored to bring in Mike Conley of the Utah Jazz, but it seems like they're keeping their feelers out at both the point guard and the center spot here at the trade deadline. Who's the MVP right now? Jokic again. He's certainly up. Excuse me. He is certainly up there in that conversation. I would say Doncic is right there as well. I've seen Embiid in the conversation. Some people are putting Tatum in there just because of the record of the club, and I get it. He has been very impactful for them, but he's not necessarily doing anything that would say, hey, that's the MVP. I just think it's Boston's way of playing, the style of play that they have, and he has a second co-star on that team in Jaylen Brown, who can do pretty much everything Jason Tatum does whenever he's not on the floor. Neither one of the Mavericks, the Nuggets, or the 76ers have a guy that can come in and do what their superstar does. They're just unique players. Right now, I'd probably say Jokic probably by a whisker. And that's only because they're a little bit higher in the standings. Dallas is struggling to find their groove defensively right now, and they need to take some of the pressure and get a little bit more versatile on offense. Take a little pressure off of Luka and get a little bit more versatile in their offense for that team to really blossom and take that next step. As far as the 76ers are concerned, they're supposedly looking for wing help here at the deadline. They're looking for some type of trade that they can go out there and bring in a guy like Reggie Bullock, etc. So we'll see what ultimately ends up happening for them. But I like what Embiid has been doing for them. Harden's really changed the way he's played changed the way he plays the game over the past 2 or 3 years. He's more of an assist guy than he ever has been in his career, and Embiid is still dominating down low. Now, a lot of guys are injured around the league that should be coming back here shortly. We just saw Jonathan Isaac play his first game since 2020. And so very nice for the Magic to get him back on the floor. If he can prove to be healthy, maybe he could be moved at the deadline just to offload that contract. Maybe get another veteran in there and allow that team to kind of blossom and grow a little bit. Maybe have a shot at the play-in if they can catch some lightning in a bottle. But Jonathan Isaac could be a name that's traded after this season if he proves to be healthy. Another team that's looking for wing help is the Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Durant is currently out right now. Is currently progressing in his rehab, etc. We'll see if he's back in the next week or two. But that is another team that's looking for wing help. They're looking for defensive players. They brought in Royce O'Neal anyway from the Utah Jazz for a first-round pick this offseason. Shrewd move for them at the time. A little confusing because I thought they were going to try to sell Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant just like we all did. But they kept that team intact, and they're right there with the Boston Celtics among the best teams in the Eastern Conference. But other teams that are in the East, just like Ryan, you mentioned, the Cavs, they're one of the other best teams out there. They're looking for wing help as well. They have a couple of expiring contracts on the roster in Kevin Love and Karis LeVert that they could move in trade. The rumored trade out there last couple of weeks anyway has been Tim Hardaway Jr. for Karis LeVert. I'm sure the Mavericks don't want to attach future assets to it, but they may have to be able to get it done. But maybe they ultimately decide to go the Bojan Bogdanovic route from the Detroit Pistons. He will be moved, I believe, here at the deadline, even though he is the leading scorer of the Pistons. With Cade Cunningham coming back, I think the Pistons would love to have those two play together and see what they have. but just the trade capital alone, that their draft capital alone that they could that they could get back for a player like Bogdanovich, an unprotected first round pick well into the future, plus additional assets. I think you really have to consider it. They also have Nerlens Noel out there, but the Cavaliers are certainly interested in bringing him in. I think trading a guy like Kevin Love in that type of a deal, maybe bringing back Noel and Bogdanovich, would be very interesting for a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. But the Cavs have identified Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bogdanovich as two of the top targets for them here at the deadline. But some news tonight is that the Grizzlies, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, their center, Steven Adams, is going to be out 3 to 5 weeks with a knee sprain. We'll see if they can keep their place in the standings right now. But they've certainly had their name in the headline over the past couple of weeks with the incident they had at the Lakers game a few days ago anyway. They've had their ups and downs this season. We'll see if they're able to weather this latest storm for them, or if this one proves a little bit too insurmountable. It does take a lot of size out of that lineup. Does make them a little bit more athletic, though, because they're going to play a lot more athletic lineups without Adams on the floor. But just want to show you guys one thing here that I haven't debuted for you guys before. It's called fanspo.com. We've touched on during our baseball lives about baseballtradevalues.com, where you can kind of simulate trades, that kind of thing, and it gives you an idea what actual value would be for a certain player. Now that we're in the NBA, contracts matter a little bit more. You can't just dump a $30 million contract on a team and take nothing back as far as salary. You have to make it work a little bit better. Now, the one thing I will say about it, there's no AI to tell you whether or not the trade is equitable or not. So, for instance, the $31 million contract of Kevin Love is not equal to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's $30+ million contract. However, you could trade one for one. That's not a fair trade. So keep in mind when you do make these trades, not to make them like, you're playing on your PlayStation or whatever. These need to be trades that, you want to see if they'll actually happen here at the actual deadline. But let me get that pulled up for you guys here. Bear with me for just a moment. So this is fanspo.com. You can use it for both the NBA and the NFL. Let me get this screen just right for you guys. So as you can see at the top, you can flip between the two. We're going to go to posts anyway, and you guys can see other people's trade proposals. You can click on new. You can search by team. So for instance, my favorite is the Mavericks. So I'm always checking this one just for ideas for what could possibly happen for my team. They like this one guy just posted this one a few minutes ago, less than an hour anyway. Bertans, Bullock, and a pick for John Collins. That's never going to happen in a million years. John Collins' trade value right now is less than a role player, and that's what Reggie Bullock is by himself. So that's not going to happen. The 3 years plus $25 million per year to John Collins. No team is biting on that contract right now. Likely the Hawks are going to eat that deal for at least this offseason. So you guys can post your trades on here. You can share them with the community that's out there. You can even send them to us in the comment section of one of our videos. Show us the link. We'll go ahead and check it out for you and let you know, hey, if that makes sense, we'll let you know. If it doesn't make any sense, we'll let you know that too. If we don't respond to your comment on the page, we will during the next live. So make sure you tune in to whenever we do go live. You can follow us here at the Upside Sports Network here on YouTube. You can subscribe here. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN as well. We also have a Facebook page, Upside Sports Network. So you can kind of see how things actually work out. You can do 3-team trades, 4-team trades, even 5-team trades. So, have fun with it, play around with it, see what you like, etc. Here's an OG Anunoby trade. This one actually makes some sense here because, just the 3 first-round picks and Bertans for OG Anunoby. Salary's about right. The only downside for this, for the Raptors, of course, is eating the Bertans money, which is roughly about $30 million left on that deal, 35 and change. OG Anunoby's under contract for 2+ years anyway, and we'll see how, if he gets moved here at the deadline. I don't think he will be, but that's about what it might ultimately end up taking to get a guy like that. Another 1-for-1 trade. We told you that the Nets were looking for wing help. Tim Hardaway Jr. would fit that. Christian Wood is out right now due to a broken thumb, but he'll be back in about a week supposedly. But this trade has the Mavericks taking back the bad contract of Joe Harris, taking on an aging point guard in Patty Mills anyway. Let's see what the other players in it. Markieff Morris and Kessler Edwards and a first-round pick. That would be interesting if the Mavericks were not willing to re-sign Christian Wood. They get back their first-round pick. Um, Still not sure if that would be the move for me if I'm the Mavericks brass. You're not exactly getting a player better than either one of the two that you're giving away, and you're only getting one first round pick back. The only thing this move does is free up some salary cap space a little, I suppose, but you still have Joe Harris's contract on the books after this. You still have Patty Mills' contract on the books after this, so it's not really that much cap saving, so I wouldn't do it as a Mavericks fan. If I'm the Nets, I say yes all day long to that trade. But let's kind of go up here to the top. You can go to Tools, Trade Machine, and Cap Manager. That's where we want to go. And like I said, my favorite team is the Mavericks, so we'll start there. You can kind of see the salaries for each player. You can look up how many years they have left on their deal. If you click on this little breadcrumbs here, this little three italicized marks anyway, you can click on View Profile, and you can look up, their stats. You can look up how much they're making, etc. You can see how they're shooting this so far this year. So, for instance, Luka Doncic for 3-point shots right now is shooting around 35%. From the field, he's shooting about 50. As far as points per game, we mentioned, let's see if they have points per game on here. They have total points on here. They don't have his per game numbers on here. Anyway, but you can even see whose agent he is or who's his agent if you're really curious about it. But you can see kind of the value of his deal throughout the years. So for instance, right now, 22, 23, 37, 23, 24, 40, 24, 25, 43, etc. And so that's kind of what your details is. Now, say we want to go ahead and make a move. Say the Mavericks and the Cavaliers trade Hardaway Jr. for LeVert. That could be a move that we see here at the deadline. You can see the salaries match up fairly well. The only difference is Tim Hardaway Jr. is on 3-year contract, or has 3 years in total on his deal, including this year, whereas LeVert will be a free agent after the year. If the Mavericks wanted to have or go out there and get somebody in free agency, or if they just wanted to re-sign Caris LeVert, that would be a way to go. I think LeVert is a better overall player and probably will command a little bit higher salary going forward. One thing to remember is that Dinwiddie and LeVert have played together before in Brooklyn, back when they were the team that was getting into the play-in, into the bubble anyway, before we saw Kyrie and KD come in there. But that would be a nice addition for the Mavericks, I believe. But you can go ahead and try the trade, see if it works. Voila, success. You can even post it and share it, do whatever you want. Post it on your Twitter, see what fans think, etc. Gives you an idea of what they expect the win probability to change. For instance, the Mavericks, they believe that'll be a 1-win addition for them. For the Cavaliers, this takes a 1 win away from them. However, like I said, the Cavs are a little bit better team. I think he fits more of a role on that team than Caris LeVert does. Hardaway Jr., I believe, has a higher ceiling for them as well offensively. Do I think he's inconsistent? Absolutely. But I think he can also give you 30 points in a game with greater regularity, say, than Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert might be your 20-point-a-game guy or your 17-point-a-game guy on average, but he's not going to be the guy that goes out there and gets you 40, something like that. But Tim Hardaway Jr. has that lethal of a three-point shot that he can get you those type of buckets. He's had difficulties getting that shot right ever since coming back from the injury, but it seems like with the more minutes he plays, the Dallas Mavericks, he's getting more and more comfortable with that shot, and they've struggled to find somebody to play that three. And I think Tim Hardaway Jr. would be the exact type of player that the Cavs could use in their offense to fill that spot, because they've tried LeVert there, it didn't work. They've tried Okoro, it didn't work. They've tried Osman, it didn't work. They've tried all kinds of different lineups to try to go small ball with Lamar Stevens. They've tried to go big again, etc. That's kind of the thought process behind the Bogdanovich trade. Think of Lauri Markkanen before they made the deal for Donovan Mitchell. Markkanen was kind of their 3 last year. I think Bogdanovich would fit a similar role with the Cavaliers if they made that move. But if you want to go back and say adjust it, oh wait, I forgot to add picks, you can go back and do that. But if you guys are curious about a trade, you guys can send it to us. Check out fanspo.com and let us know what you guys think. Here at the deadline, there's a lot of teams out there that are expected to make some moves. There was a headline anyway before the Rui Hachimura deal was made that the Milwaukee Bucks were interested in a 3-team deal with the Phoenix Suns and the LA and the Washington Wizards to get a deal done for Rui Hachimura. Hachimura going to the Phoenix Suns, possibly Jay Crowder going to the Milwaukee Bucks. So keep your eyes peeled about a Milwaukee Bucks trade for Jay Crowder as we get closer and closer to the deadline. Nobody reported that as part of the Rui Hachimura trade saga anyway, but I think that could be one of the sneaky tidbits that nobody really paid attention to about the Hachimura trade to the Lakers, is about the Bucks trying to add to that wing defender spot with Jay Crowder. Crowder hasn't played yet this year, kind of lost his starting role with the Phoenix Suns as they decided to go with Cam Johnson, and they're just going to go with that role right now. They don't want Jay Crowder around the team right now, and so they are looking to move him. It's said that they're looking for a first-round pick when they first were trying to offload his contract to begin the season. That obviously wasn't happening. 1 year of Jay Crowder does not equal a first-round pick, so we'll see where he ends up going. I think a couple of second-round picks, maybe 3 second-round picks, something like the Hachimura deal will ultimately get it done. Salary filler going back the other way could get it done, but I think the Phoenix Suns would rather add to their guard rotation right now. That was the latest headline from Shams, is that they're looking to add some point guards, especially considering the injury to Chris Paul and the age of Chris Paul as well. They need to get somebody in there who can move the ball a little bit. So for those of you who are looking at the trade market, somebody who's a low-cost point guard around the $6 to $9 million salary mark could be of interest to the Phoenix Suns. So John Wall is a name that kind of fits that role. He doesn't really fit right now in the Clippers. If they go out there and make the move for a guy like Mike Conley, maybe John Wall ends up on in another separate deal from Utah to be spun off into a deal to the Phoenix Suns. But keep your eyes peeled for what happens. And thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll be live for you guys again tomorrow night. We'll have our baseball live, going over all the Hall of Fame induction stuff. Talk a little bit about Fred McGriff, a little bit of the other headlines, the trade market, etc. And then, of course, we'll have our NBA live for you guys around 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys tomorrow evening.